Our next presentation is by Dr. Klaus Michael Beier, University of Berlin. His topic is going to be on the German Dunkelfeld project, proactive strategies to prevent child sexual abuse and the use of child abusive images. Dr. Klaus got his doctorate in medicine in 1986. 2 years later, in philosophy, his habilitation for sexual medicine took place in 1994. He became a specialist in 96 as a psychotherapist and psychoanalyst and professor of sexology and sexual medicine as the head of the Institute for Sexology and Sexual Medicine. In 2005, he initiated the Prevention Project Dunkelfeld, which offers professional help to self-identified, undetected pedophiles and hebephiles in order to prevent child sexual abuse. He is one of the principal investigators of the research consortium Neural Mechanisms Underlying Pedophilia and Sexual Offending Against Children. His last English book publication was Sexual Medicine in Clinical Practice. Welcome, Dr. Klaus. We're really honored to have you here.
I've been working in the field of sexual medicine now for more than 25 years. And I would like to introduce you to the particular clinical view of a sexologist, because it was a sexological attitude giving the background for the primary prevention approach for sexual offending against children, focusing on pedophiles. I'm going to present to you in the following minutes. At the outpatient clinic of our institute, we are dealing with the whole spectrum of sexual and gender identity disorders, which are shown on the chart. They are often interconnected. For example, sexual preference disorder can occur together with a sexual dysfunction. And to the last two, I mean the disorder of sexual preferences and the disorders of sexual behavior, I will refer later on. For now, I would like to point out that from a clinical perspective, there's one significant basic concept of sexuality which applies to all these disorders. Sexuality incorporates three core dimensions, which each fulfills quite different functions. The dimension of desire, that is the importance of sexuality and all its possibilities for increasing desire by sexual stimulation. And this dimension is always the focus of public perception. Then the reproductive dimension, and last, definitely not least, the dimension of attachment. Basically the important one for the fulfillment of basic psychosocial needs for acceptance, closeness, security, by sexual communication. And the bonding program in every human exists from the very beginning up to the end of our lives and is always dependent on the fulfillment of psychosocial basic needs, which determines the quality of life and protect us from emotional disturbances and psychosomatic disorders. These basic attachment factors are important for the understanding of sexual behavior, of understanding for the outcome of sexual traumatization, as well as for the understanding of atypical sexual behavior and damages caused by the latter. These are the emotional stabilizing factors, very important for the attachment dimension. Recent research results show that the history of childhood abuse is well capable of irritating this bonding dimension, thus creating unfavorable conditions for entering into relationships, for sexual involvement with relationships, possibly for the development of disorders of sexual function, thereby causing consequences for reproduction because partnerships do not last. So here potential long-term effects can disrupt the very basis of all areas of personal life. And in women, for instance, a measurably low concentration of oxytocin in the liquor has been found in the aftermath of a history of childhood sexual abuse. Oxytocin is an important neuropeptide for processing the mentioned attachment dimension. And the most recent findings indicate that this is also to be understood in connection to a decreased cortical representation of the genital somatosensory field in the brain. This is exactly what would demonstrate the connection to sexual disorders, but not alone that, also the connection to difficulties in intimate partnership accomplishment. So what do we know about the burden of the general population? In Germany, approximately 10% of the children are affected. And as you can see on the slide, 3 times more girls than boys. And most of the offenses occurs in the so-called Dunkelfeld. This is a German word, literally it means dark field. All those cases not known to the legal authorities. This is a Dunkelfeld. This approximately 60,000 cases per year in Germany. And according to Indian ministry data from 2007, the prevalence of child sexual abuse in India is obviously higher, and there are more boys affected than girls. So it is a public health issue, even a global health issue, and this fact should stimulate our mutual efforts concerning primary prevention, always with one eye on the particularities of each culture. In the following minutes, I would like to draw your attention to a prevention project we are running in Germany since the year 2005, 10 years now, focusing on proactive strategies to prevent child sexual abuse and the use of child abusive images. To prevent child sexual abuse, there are 2 possible approaches. One way is to focus on potential victims, as the Darkness to Light program does, and another way is to focus on potential offenders. If it were possible to reach those who might be liable to cause child sexual abuse and to influence their behavior, that would be primary prevention, because there would be no offense and no harm done to others. To achieve this goal, it is necessary to have specialized knowledge about the different kinds of offenders in order to answer the question how to reach whom. And concerning sexual offending against children, 2 groups can be distinguished. Those showing a sexual preference disorder, namely pedophilia. This is the erotic preference for prepubescent minors, for the prepubescent body scheme. And this group account for approximately 40% of officially known offenders. Another group are showing no sexual preference disorder, but who, for different reasons, sexually abuse children, which serve as a surrogate or a substitute for a sexual relationship with partners of similar age. These are sexually inexperienced adolescents, mentally retarded persons, those with personality disorders, and perpetrators within general traumatizing family conditions. And these account for approximately 60% of officially known offenders. To demonstrate this type of offending, and additionally the effect and behavioral relevance of sexualized computer games for adolescents, I would like to give you an example for a sexually inexperienced adolescent who used a boy as a substitute for a woman. A 13-year-old boy has asked a 5-year-old to have oral sex with him, to take his penis into his mouth, which he did, until reaching orgasm and ejaculating into the mouth of the 5-year-old. They had known each other by being neighbors, and the whole scene took place in the playroom of the 13-year-old, who had a hentai game open for viewing on his personal computer. This game was about a princess who would conquer invaders of the kingdom by taking their penises into her mouth. All actions and movements of the princess, obviously a fully developed woman, were achievable by pushing a key commanding oral sex and then ejaculation into the mouth. This is a game the 2 of them had been playing before the older had the idea to actually trying it out with the younger. This strongly suggests the influence of sexualized game on the developing brain and therefore the outcome of sexual behavior. Perhaps processed by mirror neurons in the brain. Now I would like to highlight an important fact concerning sexual preferences arising from clinical and empirical findings. This is one scene from the hentai game. Sexual preference doesn't change during a lifetime. It is fate and not choice. Which is why it would be wrong to condemn this by moral standards only, and then quite right, if sexual fantasies are acted out and impair others. The preferences for gender, body scheme, age of the partner, and the favorite practices manifest during puberty and remain stable. That means these preferences endure and are not changeable. They are an expression of a fixed structure. This applies to sexual orientation in general, because there has never been any evidence of sexual orientation change using different kinds of therapy techniques, and exactly so this is how it is with pedophilia too, because there is no evidence whatsoever for a long-lasting real change here either. By the way, this is what the Kama Sutra tells us. The Hindu teachers also stated that people are born with different proclivities, the results of actions done in previous lives. One's sexual orientation, it was said, is not a matter of choice but of previous life conditioning. From today's point of view, this philosophy may seem archaic concerning the mentioned causes, but the outcome is the same and very contemporary. The preference remains stable throughout life. Let me give an example. This is very important that you understand the clinical view on preference disorders, sexual preference disorders. One moment. One of my patients is a 55-year-old high school teacher who once consulted me concerning a highly complex paraphilic pattern with strong masochistic and so-called autogynephilic impact. He showed me a lot of his drawings done since his adolescence, revealing his sexual fantasies. And now this is a warning. I'm now going to show you some drawings which some people might find offensive. And don't take any picture. This is a drawing from the 14-year-old with cruel, torturing scenes. Another one. And now another one done at the age of 55. As you can see, there is no real change, only a more elaborated style. And all this time, from puberty on, he was actually high motivated to get rid of this paraphilic pattern, and did make several attempts of using therapeutic options to achieve this goal. And you can see that despite the pressure of distress and his high motivation, there was no change at all. By the way, it was a masochistic as well as an autogynephilic pattern. That means he was identified with the tortured female and sexually aroused by the fantasy of being the female victim, not of being the sadistic torturer. It is difficult to arrive at this diagnostic result only by looking at the pictures. You need to do a detailed exploration, taking the sexual preference structure into consideration at all times. And if you are able to do this in a non-judgmental way, only then will the patient tell you his fantasies in all detail. The man is completely harmless, by the way, and so are most paraphilically inclined people. But the inclined person can suffer very much from the sexual preference disorder, which can be harmful if children are involved, like in pedophilia, and if the impulses are acted out. This is a case of a participant of our prevention project in Berlin, now 45 years old, who brought along some of his old archived catalog pictures, which at the age of 12 he had found sexually arousing. It just happened. It is obvious that these were all about boys at a pre-pubertal stage. The outstanding thing is that our patient discovered the main sexual stimulant for himself to be the legs of a boy wearing woolen tights. This did not change over all the years, and he did try to motivate boys to put on woolen tights in order to take pictures of them wearing these, but he also loved to stroke and caress them. This was his main stimuli. He was a pedophilically inclined person with a specific fetishistic stimuli, the Wollentites. Another example, this is a drawing by a 15-year-old pedophilically inclined male, now aged 43. He is very much suffering from a pedophilic and a sadistic inclination. The additional sadistic pattern is obvious and was developed as early as the age of 15 years. It is these kind of images that this person is looking for on the internet. And this brought him to us. He is a child pornography only offender, meaning no contact offenses until now. Concerning recidivism, there's a big difference between the pedophilically inclined and the surrogate type. Between 50% and more than 80% of the pedophilically inclined offenders reoffended, but only 10 to 25% of the surrogate type sexual offenders reoffended within the follow-up period. And I'm pretty sure all the examples in the film were pedophiles. I mean, the offender were pedophiles. First of all, it's very important to stress the difference between sexual preference and sexual behavior. A pedophilic inclination in an individual does not mean that the inclined person will necessarily act out his fantasies. There are pedophilic men who manage to restrict their desire for sexual contact with children to fantasies only. They're in the left circle, as well as others who realize that fantasizing does not satisfy their needs and fear their impulses getting stronger and leading to child sexual abuse. These are potential offenders. And some of them wish to avoid their impulses and overwhelming them and therefore seek therapeutic help. These are the potential offenders. Yeah. We need to be aware of the fact that for men with this pedophilic inclination, it means that since puberty they have been living with their sexual arousal fantasies about children's bodies and that they have had to control these impulses in order not to become an offender and not to traumatize children. Not even in the internet by using child abusive images. Furthermore, we have to consider that most of the sexual assaults happened in the Dunkelfeld, not registered by the authorities. This is the Dunkelfeld, this part. Now we have established that a pedophilic inclination perseveres and remains stable during lifetime, so clinically relevant distress is more likely to be expected than in the surrogate type offender. And we have established that men with a pedophilic inclination are at greater risk to reoffend. The recidivism rates are up to 5 times higher. And the prevalence of pedophilia is in Germany at least 1% of the male population. So we can predict in Germany 250,000 cases. We know that from a population-based epidemiological study in Germany. Go ahead and do the calculation for India, assuming 1% prevalence for the male population. This should shift our focus onto primary prevention. Pedophilic men are to be considered the most important target group of primary prevention of child sexual abuse and of child pornography offenses, which means the consumption of child abusive images, especially those voluntarily coming from the Dunkelfeld, because there is no doubt at all about their particular therapy motivation. For that reason, 10 years ago, the research project Prevention of Child Sexual Abuse in the Dunkelfeld at the Institute of Sexology in Berlin was initiated, and at the beginning the project was financially supported by the VW Foundation. And since 2008, due to a special commitment of the Ministry for Justice, state-aided by the government. It is also supported by a German child protection organization, as well as by a well-known international media agency. Now, how do we reach those individuals? We developed a design for a media campaign by interviewing real offenders, including those from the Dunkelfeld, asking which design they would recommend, and concluded that the campaign should be non-medical, non-judgmental, non-threatening. Furthermore, the features should be empathic, authentic, and of course professional. Placement of the advertisement should be on posters, on billboards, in train stations, implying a focus on street media, not labeling the persons concerned as child molester. The media campaign was designed to communicate the following messages: empathy for the particular situation of the participants, no discrimination because of the sexual preference, because it's not a choice, it's a fate, confidentiality and anonymity regarding all collected data, no augmentation of feelings of guilt and shame. And with the support of the media agency, we started the project with the following billboard. The headline in German is a play on words and cannot really be translated. It means something like, do you love children more than you want to? And the English website slogan was, do you like children in ways you shouldn't? We actually did use street media and were supported by several companies sponsoring the placement for a period of 4 weeks. And additionally, there was a TV spot produced by the media agency, which was shown about 80 times in several public and private television stations, even at prime time, and during the most popular German political talk shows. If the equipment here works, we can have a short look in this TV spot, if it's possible. Then switch to the first TV spot. It's a little bit dangerous, you know that. Can you switch to the first TV spot?
Nächster Halt, Hauptbahnhof Nord.
Lieben Sie Kinder mehr als Ihnen lieb ist? Es gibt Hilfe. www.keintäterwerden.de.
The voice said, do you like children in a way you shouldn't? In my eyes, this is a very impressive job done by the media agency. They translated our clinical experience into this TV spot, transporting the ambivalence felt by the man being attracted to the boy and at the same time being aware of the hopelessness of his endeavor or his desire. So this was and in 2009 the media campaign was extended to include potential and undetected child pornography offenders. The message was, child pornography is sexual abuse. You are not to blame for your sexual responsiveness to child pornography, but you are responsible for your own behavior. It is your choice whether you click on it or not. Help is available. Don't become an offender, not even online. Furthermore, since July 2012, with the help of Google AdWords, potential consumers of child abusive images are guided to the therapeutic offer of our project by typical search keywords. The goal of the advertisements is to address potential consumers of abuse images directly while they search. Since the start, AdWords have been operated around 20 million times and clicked on 250,000 times. Respondents to the media campaign can contact the research team anonymously, for example by telephone and internet, and the staff is specifically trained to build a trustworthy and empathic relationship during the initial contact. A personal identification number is assigned to each respondent who self-identifies as a pedophile, expresses interest in the content of the project because of distress related to his sexual preference or fear of acting out his impulses. If there are ongoing legal activities in connection to a sexual offense, this would be an exclusion criteria. So we are working in the Dunkelfeld. And those respondents interested and able to attend a consultation are questioned about their criminal and sexual history, as well as sexual fantasies and behaviors. In addition, socio-demographic data and former experiences with health professionals are assessed. What were the effects? On average, 15 to 20 individuals per month contacted the research office in Berlin, meaning that from the beginning up to March 2015 there were more than 2,000 applications, more than 900 assessments and treatment offers to 459 individuals. The decrease is mainly due to geographic distances. The applicants came from all over Germany. Half of them had already committed child sexual abuse, real offender, in the Dunkelfeld, not known to the legal authorities. And 3/4 admitted to child pornography offenses in the Dunkelfeld. 3/4. They are averagely 38 years old, averagely educated and well integrated in the community. 1/3 of them have children. In a specialized one-year treatment program, the participants learn to ensure impulse control by using cognitive behavioral techniques, sexological tools, integrating the attachment dimension in terms of an increase of social functioning, as well as pharmaceutical options, mostly androgen deprivation therapy. So this is a whole procedure from the clinical interview up to the aftercare offer. We have an aftercare offer after the treatment. The evaluation of the project was done in a non-randomized waiting list control design with multiple assessments pre-post for 75 participants. And it revealed that the primary prevention approach reduces risk factors for child sexual abuse, prevents sexual offending against minors, and reduces the number of contact offenses, reduces frequency and severity of child pornography offenses. None of the potential offenders, I mean those ones who never offended, did an offense during the treatment. And these effects remain stable 1 year after therapy. Currently, the primary prevention project is being expanded. In addition to the one in Berlin, 10 further contact points in other German states have been successfully established. Despite the fact that we have this really huge problem of stigmatization, which could be an obstacle for contacting us, a recent study in stigmatization research demonstrates how serious the condemnation toward persons with pedophilic preference disorder is. During a series of pedestrian interviews, people were asked whether they could imagine being friends with or being a colleague to a pedophile who had never abused a child or been convicted. Around 10% of the questioned pedestrians replied to the affirmative. Approximately 40% said they should be imprisoned anyway, potential offenders imprisoned. And more than 10% had the opinion that they should rather be dead. Potential offenders, they never acted out there. This was a question. And in the second part of the survey, men with pedophile preference were asked what they thought the answers might have been. They thought that 80% of the population would have them imprisoned and that over 60% would rather have them dead. These are the blue columns. So we have recently developed a new spot which was released in the year 2013. Let me give you a short impression. The subtitles are in English. Can we have the second spot? They need to switch.
Schon früh habe ich gemerkt, dass ich anders ticke.
War schon klar, wie man über solche wie mich denkt.
Krank, pervers, Abschaum.
Dachte ich ja auch.
Dabei habe ich meine Fantasien noch nie ausgelebt. Durch die Therapie habe ich gelernt, niemand ist schuld an seiner sexuellen Neigung.
Aber jeder verantwortlich für sein Verhalten. Ich will kein Täter werden.
Präventive Therapie verhindert sexuellen Kindesmissbrauch. www.keintäterwerden.de.
So the idea was to make a point of the fact that pedophilia exists at all levels of society. Meanwhile, the spot is being shown on 8 television channels and in more than 50 cinemas, free of charge, because our budget would not allow for that high expenses. And since 2014, the prevention work has been extended to reach adolescents with an erotic preference towards children's body scheme. I'm running out of time. Another 5 minutes, okay. This project is being supported by the German Ministry of Family Affairs, and criminal statistics in Germany show that nearly 25% of sexual offending against children can be allocated to under 18-year-old. And it's our clinical experience that sexual preference particularities arise and are noticed by the individual during adolescence. So we try to address this group as well. And we produce some flyers and even a TV spot, but due to the time I will not show you the TV spot for the juveniles. And no, we are running out of time. It's okay. Okay. So may I ask you to switch the last time to the TV spot? It's also with English subtitles.
Gestern warst du noch ein Kind. Doch irgendwann hat dein Körper angefangen, sich zu verändern. Und mit ihm deine Gefühle. Erwachsenwerden ist für niemanden leicht. Für dich ist es vielleicht besonders schwer. Deine Freunde verlieben sich in Stars oder das Mädchen aus der Parallelklasse. Doch du stehst auf Kinder. Du bist der Einzige, der weiß, wie es in dir aussieht. Aber das heißt nicht, dass niemand dir helfen kann. Bei uns findest du Hilfe. Kostenlos und unter Schweigepflicht. www.duträumstvonihnen.de.
So, yes, since the launching of the project in November 2014, there are 2 inquiries per week, exclusively from male juveniles, aged about 15. Averagely, the majority is presented by the parents or step-parents, but also by guardians or foster parents. More and more Jews are coming of their own accord. In one case, the young man was adamant about not involving his parents and absolute anonymity. I will give you one example. It's very a new group for us, and we learn every day. A 14-year-old caught attention because his father has been suspected of downloading child abusive images onto his computer. It soon became clear that it wasn't the father at all, it was the son, who had been viewing these images using his father's computer. This youth showed no mental health issues whatsoever and has a stable family background. He reported having had fantasies about girls of prepubescent body scheme right from the beginning of masturbation, which led to searching the internet for exactly those sorts of images. This boy of normal intelligence explained that he very well knows what kinds of images the internet offers. For example, pornographic videos mainly showing sexual intercourse between men and women. But he told us, this is of no interest at all for me. He is exclusively aroused by the body image of prepubescent girls and interactions involving them. So the last point I would like to show you is that we are in accordance with the German Ministry of Research and Education. We are now doing scientific research on neurobiological factors, and meanwhile we have become very near to the ability assessing pedophilia using hemodynamic brain response to sexual stimuli with neuroimaging techniques. The accuracy is very high. But to assess pedophilia is, as you know now, not identical with assessing the risk of pedophilia. So what we are trying to do is to differentiate between those who offend and those who did not. And we found neurobiological differences between those groups. So, and we have to combine efforts in this field, so I'm pretty sure that we need to do this on an international level. Why? Because pedophilia is a part of human sexuality. And we can assume that it's not to be found that it is to be found in every culture and in every country. And child pornography is a topic of international concern because of the World Wide Web and the accessibility in nearly every country. Furthermore, all over the world, a huge Dunkelfeld can be assumed. Of course, in Germany, 2 or 3 minutes? 2 minutes. 3 minutes. Okay, so we have this. We have no mandatory report system and laws in Germany, and this is an advantage. But I think even in countries with mandatory report laws, you can at least focus on potential offenders. Pedophilia as a diagnosis in the ICD-10 from the World Health Organization is not a crime. It become a crime if the person acts out, and we can help that this not will be the case. And we can show that it's possible to give them, offer them therapy, and they would take this anonymously. And for me, the use of child abusive images is a strong indicator for pedophilic inclination. 1% of the male, and I have to think about the upcoming generations of pedophilically inclined. They will begin their career with the consumption of child abusive images. So to do nothing is just not the answer. And it will affect other countries when in one country the availability will not be stopped. And we can use the internet to approach the pedophilically inclined persons. And this is not a contradiction. There should be no contradiction between law enforcement and the promotion of such preventive strategies. So now, thank you for your attention.